Welcome to a Wonder Junkie podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anderson.
Aaron, thank you for coming on to my podcast, even though we're using your studio that's up and coming, and I appreciate you having me here. I realized this morning that you lived in Arizona. I actually realized that a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it would be great to have you on my show, but you have this beautiful studio here, and you have a podcast that's about to come, and it's nice to be able to come and use your space, a little bit higher tech equipment, and I do look forward to listening to that. But yeah, I thought it would be really nice to have you on the show because this is an important subject. You've written a book here called Vaccines, Amen. I read it the past week, and I started diving into some of your conversations online. And I've had Dr. Peter McCullough on my show, and I've had others, Dr. Jack Cruz, many people that have touched on this subject matter. And it's impacted me greatly. It's impacted the world greatly. And I think it's one of the most important subjects not spoken about. And the way you pinned it down in the book was incredible. You point out why people are so righteous about this subject and why it does seem to be some sort of psychological, I think, warfare to where people have been subjugated to propaganda to a degree that you can't even speak about the subject matter without people getting emotional and people shutting down their critical thinking skills. And I think, as an attorney, you did such a nice job just putting facts together and going into Congress. I listened to your hearing the other day about public perception of vaccine safety. I think it was 3 hours, and it was fascinating, and it was really well done. So I appreciate you doing this, man. I think it's really important what you're doing.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. So for people that are going to be exposed to you for the first time, that have never heard of who you are and why would you write a book called Vaccines, Amen, maybe you could give a little background on how you got here to put that much energy into the subject matter.
Sure. I've been an attorney for over 20 years. I went to Berkeley for law school and clerked after that, and worked at one of the biggest firms in the country for 3 years before I opened my own firm. And when I did that, I was still doing business-related litigation instead of multi-billion-dollar disputes, and hundreds of millions or so forth disputes. And back then, if you told me I'd be doing vaccine-related legal work, I would have laughed. But about 10 years ago, or maybe longer than that, I learned something I could never unlearn, which is that of all the products in America that I would litigate about, whether I'm defending the company or going after them, the only product that you cannot sue the manufacturer for to claim that had you made this product safer, my kid wouldn't have died. My kid wouldn't be in a wheelchair. My kid wouldn't have been seriously injured, wouldn't have a neurological issue, you name it, are vaccines. The product, they assure you is safe. And the product that we really should, of all products, assure is completely safe, given we inject it over and over to babies. So, that started my journey, that and the things, at least professionally, into vaccine-related work that happened more and more over time, whereby, at this point over the last 10 years, I've deposed many of the world's leading vaccinologists. I've sued federal health agencies around the country. I've sued the federal health agencies more times than I can count. And we probably have 100 lawsuits going on literally right now as you and I sit here.
Yeah.
Against CDC, FDA, NIH, various other agencies for various things. And so in that journey, I've had to, when I litigate about vaccines, I can't just say stuff. I don't just get to say, I'm Dr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
I have a PhD. I have an MPH. I don't get to appeal to all kinds of credentials.
Yeah.
I got to actually prove what I say and what I submit.
Yeah.
I also get to hold the other side to that proof. You're claiming X doesn't, vaccines don't cause X? Great. I want the studies. No, I don't want your conclusory statement. I don't want somebody with a supposed title saying it. I don't want a website.
Yeah.
I want the data and I want the studies and I want to see it.
Absolutely.
And so in that journey, what I came to, to learn in a nutshell is there is what public health authorities and the medical community will say about vaccines. And then there's what they actually say when they have no choice and they're under oath or they're pinned in a lawsuit and they're forced to either put up or, so to speak, shut up, right? Either give me the data and studies, prove it, or, you're going to have to admit you can't support that claim. Yeah. You're just saying that.
Yeah.
Because you believe it, because it's dogma, what have you.
So you go into the book and you start to break down the Godfather. He's considered the Godfather. Dr. Plotkin is his name.
Yeah. Godfather of vaccines.
The Godfather of vaccines. And that was fascinating to me because I started to dive into Malone's work, into Peter McCullough's work, and it's daunting when you start to dig into the subject matter. It's almost like, how could the system be that nefarious and that broken, and the trillions of dollars of however much money is being made. But you get into the 1986 Act. Let's get into sort of how we got here.
Yeah.
How did the medical doctors, I know doctors that have lived in my guest house because I rented out to doctors and nurses, that if I was to have this conversation and post it on social media, they would immediately have an emotional reaction, and they come from really high level training and they're institutionalized, but they're thinking, how did we get here?
Well, let me make it not daunting.
Okay.
To understand why the system with vaccines is so, in many ways, broken. Unlike drugs, unlike cars, unlike planes, unlike every other product.
Right.
As you and I sit here, this chair you're sitting in, is it emitting any chemicals that's going to cause you cancer? Is this microphone going to, is this glass going to shatter in ways that are going to be dangerous? Is it shatterproof? Go down the list of products around you. None of these products have the concern that vaccines do. And I think it goes down to one singular thing, what I call the original sin in my book.
Okay.
And that is, leading up to 1986, there were only 3 routine vaccines in the United States. They caused so much harm that Congress, instead of forcing them to do what every other product manufacturer must do in that scenario, which is make a better, safer product, your gas tank blows up, make a better gas tank. Your sheetrock is causing cancer, change the chemical composition of your sheetrock, right? So when your product causes harm, companies usually have an economic self-interest to correct course. They want to make money.
Yep.
Congress with vaccines went a different direction, and only vaccines. They told those manufacturers of those 3 vaccines, because they had all the manufacturers gone out of business except for one manufacturer left for each of them, MMR, DTP, and OPV. They said, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to pass a law. It's called the National Child Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. And we're just going to make it that all those families whose kids have been injured or died, they just can't sue you to claim that those products could have been made safer. It was a terrible decision. Yeah. And here's why it was such a terrible decision, why it really has led to where we are today and to the experience you had probably with Dr. McCullough and the others. The way that products are made safer is by the companies having economic self-interest. That is what drives product safety.
Yeah.
The companies themselves self-regulate. You think cars are safer, or does anybody really think cars are safer because of the government? No. You think, go, and the proof is in the pudding. Go look at countries that, like the old USSR or other communist countries, where you can't, or there are other countries you can't bring lawsuits to hold companies accountable.
Yeah.
How's product safety look in those countries?
Exactly.
Not so good. And there's incredible government control.
Yeah.
Incredible government regulation. But yet the products are not safe. They're safe because the most powerful way to assure safety is to get the companies that make them to have the self-interest to make sure they're safe. That's true of every product for the most part. But Congress broke that self-interest in 1986, not just for those 3 vaccines, but for any other childhood vaccine routinely recommended thereafter. Child in America in 1986, by 1 year of age, got 3 injections. Today, it's 29. Yeah. Every one of those products was made by a company knowing they weren't going to be liable.
Exactly.
And so what kind of trials would they do? Do they do trials like they do with drugs, long-term placebo-controlled trials? No. With drugs, they do that because they want to not lose money later.
Right.
But vaccines, they don't. So what kind of trials do they do? Well, I lay it out in my book. You read it.
Yep.
Days, weeks of safety review, no placebo controls, not enough kids in them. And so over the last 40 years, so with that backdrop, over the last 40 years, you've had basically no pushback on this industry. When you read about a problem with a car, it's because there's a big class action lawsuit. So you're like, oh man, there's this issue with this car. There's an issue with this baby product, car seat, or whatever. You're not going to read about that with vaccines.
Sure.
And so for 40 years, the corporations have had basically no pushback. Class action attorneys and product liability attorneys are totally neutered. And then the far weaker way you assure product safety is the federal health agencies. But here they're totally conflicted.
Yeah.
Our federal health agencies promote vaccines and literally defend them in a program called the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So they're entirely conflicted when it comes to vaccine safety. So who's minding the ship? What pushback? And like every good business, pharmaceutical companies make sure they promote their product. People like their product.
Yeah.
That's what they do with cars. That's what they do with other products. And they do it through learned, through trusted intermediaries like doctors and so forth. There's nothing conspiratorial about that. It's just economics and conflicts. And so when you understand that, I hope that demystifies it. And that's how we've come to where we have with vaccines.
Yeah.
And that's why you have a system where a doctor steps out of line, they fall in. But the good news is it's shifting over the last few years. And that's the whole reason I wrote my book, is so that people will stop thinking of these products in terms of being items of worship, but think of them as actual products. Because until we do, we can't fix the system. And I think to the last point you made, which is, these doctors, you said they get angry, they get emotional about these products. Well, that's what happens when what you know about something is based on belief and not knowledge. If you know something intellectually and I challenge you with data, evidence, your response will be intellectual. You'll draw on your knowledge. You'll say, wait a second, there's this other study, there's this other data, there's this other X out there. But when you don't actually have evidence, you don't have data, that's not what your basis of knowledge is based on. It's just that you believe it. Well, if I challenge you, what are you going to draw from?
Yeah.
Your emotions. And that's what you get from doctors most of the time.
Yeah.
Pediatricians, immunologists, infectious disease doctors, they know nothing about vaccines for the most part. Almost none of them do. I depose them regularly.
Yeah.
And they get angry, they get upset. And all I'm doing is showing them FDA documents, CDC data. So I think that is why you get that reaction. But if they read my book, maybe they'll change their mindset.
Yeah, I hope so. I just have a feeling like most my ideological possession, people get triggered. That's how humans work. You look at Solomon Asch studies and you look at conforming to the hive. And I think the human psychology is so well understood, and these big pharmaceutical industries understand that psychology. So they have a propaganda and a psychological tentacle into every asset of how do we get people to feel this way that they do? And so where does that propaganda machine lie? How did they get so deeply embedded? Is it just funding and research that they know how the human mind works to get people to be captured in this way? Because I was once under the impression that vaccines have saved millions of lives. Can we go into a little bit of how that narrative has come to be, and how, well, if vaccines save millions of lives, if we stop giving out polio vaccines, aren't we going to lose? Isn't it preventing transmission? And aren't we going to lose millions and millions of lives? Well, you've put together in your book some really interesting things. Yeah.
Well, on the first part of your question, to understand why they get to just control the narrative for the most part, it really does come down to moneyed interests. The pharmaceutical industry makes billions of dollars every year. And like a good business does, they want to continue to make sure they continue to make billions. So where do they put money? Where do they invest? They're not doing ads on TVs as much. Rather, what they do is they fund the vaccinologists whose views of the world align with what would be best for pharma's bottom line.
Yeah.
Again, nothing nefarious about that. That's just good business.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the vaccinologists who rise tend to be the ones that pharma patronizes. Oh yeah, here's $1 million to, conduct our clinical trial. Ooh, your views. Yeah, those views are not going to help us get that product license. They're not going to help us sell more product. oh, you're raising safety issues of vaccines. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. It's not, it's not, they'll go to the next guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so the vaccinologists that rise, as I lay out in my book, are the ones that pharma typically patronizes. Find me a really, successful vaccinologist, and I will typically find you somebody who has received lots of pharmaceutical money in various ways. Now, those are the ones who then write the medical textbooks on vaccines. They're the ones who author a lot of the conduct the clinical trials and so forth. The rest of the medical profession, people view as, well, they're doctors. They really just rely on the vaccinologists, right?
Yeah.
Even the pediatricians or the ID doctors, infectious disease doctors, the immunologists. So where do they get their views from? They get it from the vaccinologists.
Yeah.
But they too not only are influenced from the vaccinologists who are curated effectively by pharma through like a pharma selection, they also go to conferences. And who's funding those conferences? They have sales reps walking into those offices. From where? Pharmaceutical companies. They read the medical literature. Where is that? By journals. Who funds the journals? As I lay out in my book, major editors of major journals will tell you, some of them even literally say that the medical journals are basically information laundering, not my words, for the pharmaceutical industry. And so pharmaceutical companies also help fund medical schools and textbooks and influence the curriculum. So they have an incredible amount. They deploy their money wisely, as a good business does, and they influence every aspect of the medical community. Then, where does the media go when it comes to this topic to get their information? They go to the same profession, okay, who often don't know much about it, but are good at regurgitating the canned slogans about vaccines. You also have, it's been reported that in off-election cycles, the major news outlets get their number one source of dollars of revenue comes from pharmaceutical ads. I'm not verified myself. I don't have an insight into the books of the news outlets. But that's what's been reported by many people. And so they have influence in that manner too. And then, of course, if you step out of line, you see what happens to those who step out of line. So on the first part of your question, how is it that they exercise so much control? Well, they fund every aspect of this entire endeavor with virtually no moneyed interest pushback. The moneyed interest would typically be by holding them financially accountable. It's not the lawyers per se. It's the members of the public who go, I have been hurt. For example, you look at drugs. When a drug causes a harm, people start contacting firms. They start accumulating cases. They go to news outlets. News outlets will report on it. That's just not going to happen with vaccines typically. So that should answer the first part of what you brought up. Then in terms of the number of deaths from these products, right? You will often hear millions would die. Millions will die in America.
And millions have been saved.
And millions will be saved every year in America from not getting vaccines. Well, as I'm sure if you read the whole book, I have a chart in there. And what that chart does is it shows you the year the first vaccine was licensed for a given disease and the number of reported deaths the year prior, okay? And obviously you've gone through that chart, and what you've seen is that even when you add all that up, you're in the thousands. Now, every death's a tragedy, but that's not the end of the story, as you know. It's far from the millions. It's far from the hundreds of thousands, not even tens of thousands. It's thousands. So now you got to say, okay, this entire vaccine program, maybe it's saving thousands, maybe. Well, how much harm is it doing, right? And what are the effects of deploying this program? And we can use the measles vaccine as one example. Most people think that millions died in America before a measles vaccine, but really, as you already know, only around 400 Americans died a year from measles. That's a death rate of 1, and 450,000 Americans died of measles when there was no measles vaccine in the late 50s and early 60s, and everybody in this country got measles. Far from the millions that people are led to believe. It's It's probably why on the Brady Bunch, they're like laughing about everybody getting measles back when they, did the episode about measles. And between 1900 and the introduction of the first measles vaccine in 1963, mortality for measles had declined by 98%, over 98%. There's no reason that wouldn't have continued. So maybe at best, even as the population was growing in America, measles mortality was going down by 98%. So at best, maybe the measles vaccine saved in America some portion of that 400 lives. But how many lives did the measles vaccine cost?
Right.
Now we got to ask.
And what were the reasons for this decline? You said it was clean water, technological advancements, different things were contributing to that decline, right?
Well, what I say in my book is I know what's not causing it.
Right.
Vaccines.
They weren't around.
Because they didn't exist.
Year, yeah.
I did have a doctor try to persuade me. Had a non-existing product. It was incredible. Finally had to admit, okay, that makes no sense. Because a non-existent product can't cause a decline in the mortality of measles from 19. And yes, I mean, it's been attributed to clean water, better sanitation, better sewage, garbage collection, nutrition. You can go down the list, right? As, by the way, occurs anywhere you have improvements in those areas, mortality declines. Vaccines or no vaccines. Of course, whenever there's also they introduce vaccines, they'll always attribute it to vaccines. It's amazing to me. Public health officials should take credit in large part for the decline in the measles mortality, but not because of vaccines, because they instituted a lot of these improvements in living conditions.
Sure.
But they never take that credit. They always ascribe it all to the vaccine. It's always wild to me. But as you know from the book, studies that compare people that had measles to those who don't, those that have had measles have a 20% statistically significant decline in cardiovascular death. That's a 100,000 person prospective 20-year study in Japan that found that.
Yeah.
Highly reliable. And there's no studies that show the contrary. There are studies that show a statistically significant reduction in mortality from various cancers if you've had measles. Hodgkin's lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that kill a lot of kids, like over 20,000 people in America a year.
Wow.
50% reduction in ovarian cancer if you've had measles. It kills a lot of women a year. So have we maybe saved some lives from the measles vaccine? But maybe we've caused far more deaths. Maybe there was a God-given, nature-given, whatever one believes in, reason that unlike so many other pathogens that have come and gone throughout history, measles didn't. Measles, humans appear to have developed an ecological relation with measles because maybe it conferred a survival advantage, like chickenpox.
Yeah.
Chickenpox studies show the same results. These febrile, fever-inducing childhood infections, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, those that have had them have less rates of these other issues according to the science. Inconvenience studies.
Yeah.
I didn't do them. I didn't publish them.
Yeah.
They're all there on PubMed for the world to see. So yes, this notion that that millions in America died or that millions would be saved in America from vaccines it's just a belief.
Yeah.
It's religion.
And what
It's
about
not
polio?
data.
Polio is another triggering conversation for people, and you hit on that.
Nothing triggers more than polio.
That one's the big one.
Nothing triggers more than polio. That's why the New York Times went after me on polio.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, because they knew they were tapping into deep emotion.
And
they're like, we're going to get them.
Yeah, you put out a title on something and people's perception has already shifted, ideologically captured, and they won't even look into the full article. They just say, okay, they're trying to get rid of the polio vaccine completely.
Just the word polio evokes emotion for so many. Just polio.
Yeah.
Just say, it's like,
And that's the number one that I always hear if I bring up that vaccines have any issues at all. So maybe you could go into a little bit of why polio vaccines have not saved millions of lives.
Well, I mean, it would be impossible to claim polio vaccines saved millions of lives in America, given the fact that first of all, in the years before there was a polio vaccine, you had typically hundreds of deaths. I should never say only. There were hundreds of deaths from polio, reported deaths from polio, maybe 1,000 before there was a polio vaccine. The first one was in 1955. Now, again, every death is a tragedy, but that's far from millions a year.
Yeah.
Also, polio is a very interesting pathogen because every other infectious disease for which we vaccinate, the underlying disease, the mortality was precipitously declining from the 1900 onward, like precipitously declining with no vaccine. Polio is the only one that was going the wrong direction. Only one.
Yeah.
In fact, the very first real outbreaks of polio occurred in 1890. Before that, there's really no cluster reports, maybe some isolated cases. So something made polio, the virus, more pathogenic, cause harm
Yeah.
in the 1890s, and only in developed countries. Did not happen in the developing world. In the that it wasn't a linear increase from the 1890s to 1955. It started going, and it spikes in the 1940s. And you have military bases in other countries, U.S. military, Australian military, UK military bases, places like China and Philippines and other places.
Yeah.
Where on the military base you have cases of polio.
Yeah.
But no polio cases in the surrounding populations.
So vaccine-induced polio from creating the polio vaccine for the Mary's Monkeys book. They created a vaccine that was intended to harm or to create cancerous. There's stuff in there,
yeah,
right?
well, listen,
You're not going
I'm talking
there.
about. All I'm saying is that what the data shows.
Yeah.
Pre-1955. I'm talking about pre-vaccine era.
Yeah.
Is that polio as a virus was just innocuous until the 1890s. And then it started to become more virulent only in developed countries. And even amongst people from developed countries when they were in army military bases, for example, in developing countries.
I see.
By the way, this is not me saying this. This is Alfred Sabin, the inventor of the oral polio vaccine.
Yeah.
He has whole articles he's written about this, contemporaneous back in the day. So you look at that and you say, okay, you have this virus that appears to be able to cause damage to the in the spinal column, okay, myelitis, right, and it wasn't doing it, then it started doing it. Well, what caused that? And it only happens in some geographical areas. And then after the polio vaccine was introduced in 1955, that was the Salk vaccine, Jonas Salk. Okay. It was used in developed countries. Developing countries really didn't have a spike in polio until the 70s. It was actually almost like in the 60s, it kind of went away and then it came back, oddly. The contemporaneous literature, as I lay out in my book, reflects that when Jonas Salk's vaccine was introduced in 1955, one of the things they did is they changed the diagnostic criteria for polio, okay? It used to be pre-1955, you had to just be diagnosed with some infirmity that would be reflective of paralysis within 24 hours. No lab tests. That's it. 2 instances 24 hours apart. I look at you, you got a little bit of weakness in your legs, 2 times 24 hours apart, polio. In 1955, they changed the diagnostic criteria. You now needed to have some physiological indication of paralysis 60 days apart, not 24 hours.
Okay.
And you need laboratory confirmation that it was the polio virus.
Wow.
So when they did this change, what they actually started finding is that they couldn't find the polio virus in a large percentage of the folks who they would have normally diagnosed with polio pre-1955. They found Coxsackie virus. They find all kinds of other explanations for what caused the paralysis. So yeah, of course you had a decline in polio cases, paralytic polio. So it went to 1954. I think in the whole United States there was, I forget, a few thousand cases of paralytic polio, and it starts declining. But in 1960, the scientists of the day, like the country's leading scientists, they put out an analysis that went back and said, okay, if we take the same diagnostic criteria, the new ones for 55, and we applied it to the period from 1950 to 54, what would polio cases, paralytic polio cases look like pre-Salk's vaccine in the early 50s to post-Salk vaccine in the late 50s? And they found that not much of a difference.
Wow.
Because most of the cases beforehand in the early 50s probably were from a polio virus.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't alleviate the human suffering that those folks who had paralysis had, obviously. But, they said, and I have it in the book, not me, they said, and they have a chart, it's all in there, that doesn't account for it, the Salk vaccine doesn't account for it. And then when you really start taking a look at, well, okay, we have a virus that was, otherwise innocuous, became more virulent, then became less innocuous, happened in different geographic areas, you start getting a better picture of polio, what polio is, and you start putting it into the context of science, data, reason, logic, and you can think about it rationally. The Salk vaccine, for example, that was put out, doesn't stop transmission of polio in any way. It's injected into the arm. That will create immunity in the blood, IgG antibodies. It creates no immunity effectively in your intestinal tract. And polio proliferates in the intestines, and it's fecal to oral contamination. You got to get somebody's poop in your mouth.
Yeah.
Right? So if it can't stop transmission, then the people who don't get the vaccine, they are not protected.
Right.
There's no community immunity. You shouldn't have a reduction in the number of cases of polio. In fact, if you've gotten the vaccine, you're supposed to be less likely to have symptoms. So you're still walking around. You're not going home, right?
Yeah.
So you're potentially more likely to spread it. But yet countries in Europe that only ever use the IPV vaccine, the populations in those countries that never took the vaccine, they also ended up never having polio. Polio was eradicated for them too. How can that be? It defies logic. It defies reason.
Yeah.
Try as they may, they've tried so many ways to explain this, and they just keep failing. Like the way they tried to explain, for example, well, why did cases of polio become more virulent? They called it the clean hygiene theory. We started being cleaner in our environment in the West, in developed countries, and so that's why, But Alfred Sabin himself went and tested this theory. He said, well, okay, you're saying that because we have a cleaner environment, babies are not getting exposed poliovirus until the maternal antibodies wane after 6 months. So then it's dangerous. Oh, okay. So that means that if I go into a developed country, and he went and did this in China back then in the 40s, in the 40s and 50s, and he went and he tested the population. He said, okay, well, then I should find that 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds are all immune to polio, but they weren't. And he said, well, that theory doesn't work because that means they're not being protected by maternal antibodies and get infected in the first few months of life.
Right.
So that theory falls apart. But that's the theory they used then. You'll still hear it today. You know what else you'll find at the same time? It's so funny. If you go to the WHO website, they'll tell you that the reason we still have polio in some countries is because of the lack of hygiene.
Okay.
So you will literally, if you go into the literature right now, you will hear it both ways depending on what makes the most sense in that context.
That's amazing.
The clean hygiene theory or the lack of hygiene theory, they both apparently coexist, which of course really means you can't have either. You can't have it both ways. They just won't, they can't accept that the actual impact of the vaccine, of the Salk vaccine, is not what they claimed it is. Now, I will add to this, and I've said a lot.
It's good.
That in 1961, Alfred Sabin developed the oral polio vaccine. Now, unlike the injected one, this is a live vaccine. You're actually giving the person polio. Now, it's a Frankenstein modified version of the virus, but it's alive. You've grown it on monkey kidney cells and put all that stuff. And like you said, those monkey kidney cells ended up, for the first, the years that they used those oral polio vaccine and even the initial inactivated polio vaccine, ended up infecting millions with something called SV40, simian virus 40, the 40th simian monkey virus identified in the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
And those in SV40 has been found in cancers, in human cancers of all kinds. Now, that's quite inconvenient
Yeah.
if it turns out that the polio vaccine for a disease that, you know, maybe killed a few hundred and caused trials for 3,000 before there was a vaccine, could be causing cancer and God knows how many people.
Yeah.
Oof, that would be pretty bad for the vaccine program. And what you end up having is a long series of studies over the last decades in which some studies show that the SV40 is causally related to the cancer, and some saying that it's not. Okay. It's definitely found in the tumors, but is it causing the tumors?
Right.
Now, if you take that body of science and you segregate out the studies that were funded by conflicted agencies and conflicted interests, and you leave all the unconflicted ones, the full body gives you one result. The smaller body gives you a different result.
Yeah.
So I just leave it at that. Anybody who wants to can look into it. So the story is complex. It could be that that it ended up causing far more harm than good. The oral polio virus vaccine, because it's live, does create some intestinal immunity and might have contributed to reducing the transmission of the virus. Anyway,
and
I've just said a lot of stuff.
No, I love it, and I don't want to hammer too hard on the SV40 thing, but it's probably one of the highest censored conversations on the internet right now, and I hadn't heard of it until I heard Dr. Jack Kruse speak of it, and it gets really dark and weird when you start to hear that it became somewhat of a bioweapon that they were trying to use to get Castro, and you don't have to go there, but if you start to look at it as, okay, we made a mistake, we created something that creates a super cancer, the Defense Department or whoever wants to use it now as a bioweapon. Well, what's really interesting is that there's a molecular biologist named Kevin McKiernan. Have you heard of him?
I believe I heard the name.
Okay, so he is the only place I see him active now where you can actually receive any of his information is still on X because it's not as censored. But he's found SV40 in the current COVID-19 jabs in the vials. And so he's brought this to a lot of people's attention, and there is more censorship around this subject matter because why is that showing up in our current COVID-19 mRNA technology? And that's really bad, right? It's like this could be now considered just like the virus was manufactured for whatever reason you want, released from a lab. No one's been held accountable. There's funding involved. There's conflicts of interest. It gets really dark and nefarious if you start to think, would somebody actually intend to create super cancers in an institution or in an environment where you could make trillions of dollars? Same people are going to capitalize on it in the end and cause that much harm, knowing it's going to cause harm. And that's what seems to be happening with the mRNA technology. I mean, Trump just funded again Pfizer, and he's funding this stuff. And I'm wondering what RFK thinks about that. You could see him in the background. What are your thoughts on him funding mRNA technology right now? We're jumping way ahead, but I'm curious about this.
If I can address the first part about, the Castro and all that stuff. I mean, listen, I don't think you need to go into any kind of speculation when it comes to vaccines to go to a dark place, right? I mean, those kind of things, obviously, require some degree of speculation.
Yeah.
How about just go to the FDA website, look at what was relied upon to license the Hep B vaccines injected into millions of babies in America. What was the clinical trial?
Yeah.
Right? For the first one, there's only two. First one is 147 children, 5 days of safety monitoring after injection, no control.
It's amazing.
Okay. That's a fact.
Yeah. And what is a normal product?
No speculation, multi-year placebo-controlled trial.
Yeah.
That is a hard fact, not debatable. It's on the FDA site. We have the clinical trial reports. I've deposed everybody I can. Dr. Plotkin was the principal investigator for that clinical trial, deposed him about it. That is the reality. That's dark.
What's his response?
Oh, man.
Because he has 900 or so peer-reviewed papers.
You should watch that portion Deposition, and I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you the response he had. So just to give the setting, okay, this is 7-8 years ago. I knew a tiny fraction of vaccines as I compared to what I know now. And here I am about to depose the world's leading vaccinologist, and I want to ask him about this clinical trial for the Hep B vaccine, because I didn't believe that's all there was. I didn't believe it.
Right.
I said it can't be.
Yeah.
You're going to go and vaccinate every baby in America with this product, and you really don't know its safety profile. What if you were wrong?
Yeah.
You could just you could just destroy our country. You could have just caused infertility in every kid. Thank God that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
But you could have, God knows what could have resulted. There's a lot of harm from that product, to be sure. We have endless clients relating to that. But it could have been far worse. Now,
Sure.
So I'm in the deposition with him. And I say, Dr. Plock, and I hand him the package insert. I say, how long was safety monitored in the clinical trial allowed upon to license this Hep B vaccine? He flips to section 6.1. He flips there. He looks at it. And he says, 5 days of safety monitoring. I go, 5 days? Is that long enough to detect if it can cause X? And he's like, no. How many kids were in it? Not enough kids. I mean, it's ridiculous trial.
Yeah.
Now, in that deposition, there's something I didn't know. Well, first of all, I was sure he would tell me something I didn't know. He didn't. After the deposition, we subpoenaed him to produce any additional documents to support that there was more than this 5 days and hundreds of kids. You know what he did? He went and got a lawyer. He filed a motion to quash the subpoena so he wouldn't have to produce anything. Never produced anything.
Wow.
Fine.
Yep.
Then we FOIA'd the FDA for the clinical trial reports because I still wanted to see it. Maybe Dr. Plotkin didn't know.
Yeah.
We got the clinical trial reports. Guess who is listed as the principal investigator of the clinical trial for the childhood trial for that Hep B vaccine? Dr. Stanley Plotkin. Meaning I sat across from the very man that ran the trial.
Yeah.
And when I handed him the package insert, when I asked him how long was safety reviewed, and as I write in my book, it reflects that, to me, what it reflects is that safety is such an afterthought in these trials that even he, as the principal investigator of this trial for this Hep B vaccine, couldn't recall how long safety was monitored.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That's amazing.
Right. So, when you want to go to a dark place, you don't need Castro.
Yeah.
You don't need any of this stuff.
Yep.
You just need to literally, that is dark. It is
Yeah.
dark to unleash a product on babies and tell mothers and fathers safe and effective, proven, robust clinical trials, robust post-licensure safety when it's not true.
Yeah.
That's dark.
So dark.
That is dark. You don't need speculation in my
And
mind.
it's all for profit. I mean, now that they can't be sued because of the 1986 Act, that's when you started to see this happen, right?
That is when this all shifted. You could talk about vaccine harm even in the news back in the 70s. You can go watch clips on it in the early 80s. And then it slowly starts to shift away from that. Absolutely. I do not think that pharmaceutical companies would unleash products on the not only in America, around the world.
Yeah.
Because this immunity is in most developed countries. With the type of safety data they have, if they were actually going to be held accountable. I'll respond to a question you didn't ask. Okay, people go, well, but if they're not immune, then they'll stop making them. Oh, we can't have that.
Yeah.
Why? Why would they stop making them?
Right.
There are drugs given to just a handful of people that cause all kinds of harms, and they can make money from those drugs, but they can't from vaccines given to millions.
Yeah.
Really? All they got to do for the most part is make them as safe as technologically feasible to avoid what they call design defect claims. And they have to disclose all the risks, and you can't hit them with a failure to warn claim. If you do those two, they in large part can protect themselves like they do with drugs.
Yeah.
Clearly, they don't want to do that.
And why it's amazing that people can't seem to see these as products. They see them as this untouchable subject that vaccines are separate from any other product on the market. That's what blows my mind. And it's all because of the amount of money that influences public perception, right?
Yes. It was also because Moses brought them down. Oh, no, those were tablets. I'm sorry. I got confused. I apologize. It's because I think it's because most people will go through life and all they will ever hear is that vaccines saved us.
Yeah.
It's just like it's almost religious language. You know, we have many clients that during COVID said who had sincere religious objections to taking the COVID shot because what they heard on the news, what they heard is the only thing that can save us is vaccines.
Yeah.
And they would say, it's not what I believe. I believe Jesus saves us. I believe God saves us. I believe
they had different conflicting beliefs.
Yeah. I can't this is like the mark of the beast. I can't participate in this because that's not my religion. My religion is not that this is going to save me. No, God will save me.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
man takes steps towards that. But and so for many, it really is it's a belief. And you know, and I think especially for those that, you know, well, I'll just leave it at that. I think it really is a belief. And I think that I said it earlier, 40 years of basically no pushback. And all you hear is millions would die.
Yeah.
They saved us. You know, they're this panacea, totally safe and effective. Anybody who refuses them is crazy, anti-science, anti-vax, a quack. Just go down the list of pejoratives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you develop a certain view on these products that become emotional.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, you don't believe in them.
Yeah.
Instead of having a rational discussion.
And it's manufactured and deployed in that way, which I've heard Robert Malone say we should have a little compassion for the people that were persuaded to get this, the more modern COVID-19 injection, because that was the greatest psyop in human history. There's more sophistication and propaganda pushed behind that one particular product than anything that's ever been deployed in history. Because I used to get a little angry about it, right? And now I'm like, hold on, like I know loved ones and people I work with that have had it, but you should almost expect it now at this point because of how susceptible people are. They're trying to raise kids. They're busy doing things. They don't have time to do what you've done and dive into this. Most vaccinologists haven't even touched 10% of what you've learned about vaccines, and you didn't plan to. That's what's interesting about it, is you know more than most vaccinologists do because you have to present the facts. You can't rely on titles.
That's why I wrote my book, so parents can get educated. This is like the Consumer Report for vaccines. No, you shouldn't. I never blame a parent or an individual who took one of these products. They don't know. And they did what they were told they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Trust your doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you get fired, or all of the repercussions that was put upon them.
I'll tell you two things on that score. First, when I go to buy a car, the public has been convinced that when I walk into the medical office, I have to prove to the doctor it's not safe, or else, of course, I should take it.
Yeah.
No other context do I walk into a store and the salesman goes to me, hey, you need to prove to me that, you know, this product's going to hurt you or else you got to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's first of all. But that's how amazing the mind twist has been with this product. Number two is that I get people always say to you, well, it's anti-vaxxers that call you about vaccine injuries, isn't it? And I always say, no. Anti-vaxxers actually never call me about vaccine injuries. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, because they don't get the vaccine. They're not going to call me about a vaccine injury.
Sure.
Folks who have issues with vaccines don't get the vaccines.
Yeah.
It's the folks
who are harmed,
who get the vaccines that get harmed. It's always deeply ironic that they're the ones who are called anti-vaxxers when they got the vaccine.
Yeah.
They went and got a vaccine. Then they had an issue. Also, I hear all the time, well, if vaccines cause harm, I would know it. Really? Name me the last 3 drugs that came off the market. You know what? Name me, what harms those drugs caused. Yo, you don't. Why would you know that?
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You'd know it if you were injured by it.
Sure.
If a statin that came off the market injured you, oh, you'd know it.
Sure.
Your kid was injured, oh, you'd know it. Your aunt, your mother, your dad, your grandpa, you'd know it. Your good friend. But if it didn't, why would you? And I don't know why people think they would know vaccines are not safe if they weren't. Why would you?
And the amount of
wouldn't
narrative
know.
control, the amount of censorship, and that's a big piece that a lot of people don't get to hear the real conversations about it, you know? So there's a lot of algorithmic narrative control on the internet that takes keywords and pumps and dumps certain narratives. And so people are being hypnotized into believing a certain narrative.
Mhm.
I mean, everyone in my neighborhood, I actually was sitting having breakfast this morning next to a guy with his kids. He's like, the kids are probably 3 and 5, you know, we're going to get your flu vaccine today, you know, and I don't want to I'm not going to say anything to that guy. Of course not. That's not my thing to do. I don't know this person, but I could just overhear it. But I was also just about to come see you later the afternoon. I'm thinking like, this is so interesting. And I live in a very, I guess you could call it liberal neighborhood. And during the pandemic, you know, people are walking around outside with masks on, and there's just like the thing about the religious component of it that you put so well in your book is that I think the psychological understandings of how people operate is that we're easily persuadable. That's what all those studies have done on human psychology. And Big Pharma, they're smart and they're a good company. They know how to make money. And I think that's what they've done is they've made it this righteous, untouchable subject. And it's an untouchable subject. I can't go to the fire station tomorrow and talk about it. People just avoid it, especially if they got jabbed during 2020, 2021, because now they feel almost, I think, concerned and they don't want to deal with the truth. A lot of people, I've met these people where they're like, great, I did end up getting it, you know, and it's sort of like a hush conversation. What should I do? How do I get rid of the spike protein that's in my body? And it's really an unfortunate situation. Can we drill into a little bit of what you discovered with like the clinical trials for the COVID jab in particular, and we can go into some of the childhood vaccines and some of the clinical trials that weren't done or how they were done?
Sure, absolutely. I'll just make one comment on this father you just told me about who's going to take his kids. And one thing I'll just want to say is that in terms of, getting the vaccines, not getting the vaccines, my ideological view of it is that
freedom of choice.
Exactly.
Yes.
Me too. Don't get them.
Freedom.
But nobody should be coerced. It's about freedom. And that really is, it's so critical. It's so important now.
But is there freedom if you're being psychologically pushed in a certain direction?
I
right?
mean,
like if there's that much money in propaganda, is that freedom? Because there's a lot of money to write headlines in the New York Times to make you sound like an RFK, to sound like you've done something. And that's all people now are walking around with is that we're quacks. And the word anti-vax or the word conspiracy theorist, these words are invented to just discredit somebody. And that's not necessarily freedom once you understand human psychology. To me, not saying that people should just take responsibility and think for themselves when you can't. That's what Robert Malone speaks to, is that we are under the influence of the greatest psychological psyop in history.
Well, I think the solution to that, by the way, in my view, is you got to get the government out of the business of vaccines.
Yeah.
The government needs to not be involved.
Right.
Let the companies stand behind their product, let them promote their product, let them try to psyop the public all they want. The problem is when the government gets behind it. That becomes really, when the government decides to come down on something, that's when you get censorship, bullying, coercion, mandates, you name it.
Right.
Throughout the long arc of history, that's how dictators
prevail.
Behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, if I can't persuade you, then I censor you, then I coerce you, then I bully you, then I beat you, put you in a thuggery, and going down.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of this country, the whole idea of this flag sitting behind you is that we are a country founded with a core belief of individual and civil inalienable rights bestowed upon us by God.
Yeah.
Okay. And that, to be sure, those rights come with danger. But freedom of speech, letting you say what you want, comes with danger. Assemble with who you want, practice what religion you want.
Sure.
But that the greater danger is always having the government take away those rights.
Sure.
So the maximum extent possible, we let people have their rights.
Yeah.
And we don't infringe upon them. when you got the government spending billions to promote these products and their policy is to get it in every arm, governments do what governments do, which is if they're not getting what they want, trying to persuade you with ads, so then censor you. Oh, well, shoot, they're not listening to us. Take them off Facebook.
Yeah.
Take them off TikTok. Oh, it's not working. It's not working. Mandate it. Mandate. How companies over 100 people.
Yeah.
Got to get it. Oh crap! That's still not doing it. I guess just put stuff on the CDC website that says it's amazing for all these reasons that are actually completely bull.
Yeah.
And we can't really support. You don't even take down even when they're called out on it.
Right.
I mean, this is what happens when government starts to overreach, and it's the part of the pandemic that was the scare. The virus is not the scary part of it. That was the scary part of the pandemic.
Me too. Yeah.
It is because viruses come and go. But this democracy, what we have built here,
it can go overnight.
We could lose it like this. And then where are you going to go?
Yeah. And it never comes back. You take a little bit, and you always lose it forever.
Rights ceded to the government are rarely returned.
Yeah. So go into a few of the issues with the COVID-19 studies.
Yeah.
So that people can get a little under, if
the
they're willing
trial,
to.
Right. You asked me about
trials.
the trial.
Yeah. No, it's all right. I love where we're going, but some people don't know any of the messiness that was involved in these clinical trials.
Sure.
And with childhood vaccines.
Yeah.
And that was eye-opening to me, what you put in your book.
So we brought the lawsuit against the FDA to release all of the clinical trials it relied upon in like 100-something days to license Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. We also then did one for Moderna. You recall there was like Reuters put out a news article, FDA wants to wait 55 years to release all the data. And then it was 75 years. And really, it was actually hundreds of years because the FDA initially misrepresented how many pages it was. First, it was 300,000, 400,000, turned out to be over 1 million. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we were in federal court. I was down in federal court. I argue, down there. It was really interesting being in court. I'd be at one table, and then the other side would be the DOJ attorney, the FDA attorneys, and the FDA representatives. And at some point, the Pfizer attorneys came, and the Pfizer representatives, and like they had an army on one side, And the judge was incredible. I mean, the federal judge in Fort Worth on this, he was amazing. I mean, he sided on the side of transparency, freedom that the public should know.
Yeah.
So he ordered that they release all the documents. In any event, when you actually look at the clinical trial documents underlying the Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, okay, and this is maybe what you're referring to, clinical trials are supposed to be a statistical comparison between a group that gets the product and a group that doesn't get the product. Why? Because you don't know how it affects the human body. So you don't want to inject bias.
Sure.
The researchers, those conducting the trial are who? They're paid by Pfizer. They're Pfizer paid researchers. It's not like the FDA does a trial. No, the FDA just gets the data afterwards and doesn't even get all the data. It gets the Pfizer curated data. Okay. So in that trial, when it came to deaths, the most important outcome, you would expect more people would die in the placebo group because there was a placebo control in the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial. You would expect that those that got the placebo would have died at a higher rate than those that got the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole point was to produce deaths. Guess what? And this is in the FDA documentation, okay? 21 deaths in the Pfizer group, the group that got the Pfizer vaccine, 17 deaths in the placebo group.
It's amazing.
21 to 17. So the best data, a prospective, randomized, controlled, placebo trial showed more deaths, far more deaths in the vaccinated versus the placebo group.
It's amazing.
Okay? That's what they say you should rely upon. Got to rely upon the clinical trial. Well, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
You got the clinical trial. So what did the FDA do? What did Pfizer do? You would think they would pull the plug, say, oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, instead, they let Pfizer explain away every single death. Oh, that's not related. That's not related. That's not related. That's not related. And they said, okay, we're just not going to count any of these deaths.
Wow.
But meaning they didn't do what they were supposed to do, statistical comparison. Remember they told you it's 95% effective? You know how they got that number? About 8 people in the vaccine group had symptoms who were tested positive for COVID, and about 100 something had some symptoms, mostly mild, in the placebo group who tested positive for COVID with symptoms. Did they look under the hood? No. They did a statistical comparison. 8, 160, whatever it was, 95% effective for sniffles. Wait a second. Okay. Now you might say, okay, well, if they tested everybody, shouldn't you do a statistical comparison? Well, they also did capture all deaths. Here's the craziest part. They didn't test everybody. They didn't test everybody every week. They didn't even test everybody with symptoms.
Wow.
There were thousands of other cases of symptoms that fell into these weird categories. What about them?
Right.
So in terms of bias, death's binary. You're either dead or you're alive. I mean, I think that's how it works. Okay. So you had all the deaths and you knew you could break them in 2 groups, but you didn't test everybody with symptoms. You didn't break everybody into the 2 groups of, everybody with symptoms, test everybody. This is the number that were positive, negative, right? So if you were going to inject bias and look under the hood, and you should have done it on that. Oh, but no, because the numbers came out the way you wanted, statistical comparison. But the deaths didn't come out, inject bias, explain them away. God. That is just, let's just say inappropriate.
Yeah,
that's
unbelievable.
Not science. That is not the way it should work.
It's almost anti-scientific, right? It's the opposite of science.
It's deeply troubling.
Yeah.
It's very, very deeply troubling. I can go into far more.
Yeah.
But I think those 2 data points, I think should drive the home. And there was a lot of other issues with that trial. And here's the saddest part of that trial. That is, if you're going to take a vaccine based on how robust this clinical trial was, of all the vaccines on the schedule, Hep B, HIV, IPV, DTaP, go down the whole list, take a COVID vaccine. Because that was comparatively, in my opinion, the most robust clinical trial of any childhood vaccine.
That's horrible.
We did hepatitis B, 147 kids, 5-day safety monitoring, no control. At least this had a placebo control group. They reviewed safety for 6 months. They had about 30 or 42,000 people in it, depending on whether it's Pfizer or Moderna's. A lot better compared to most of the clinical trials, which I go vaccine in the book.
Yeah.
So it is. It's deeply troubling. That's why I'm telling you earlier.
Oh my God.
We don't need to go to weird places with vaccines. I just
stick to the stuff we already know.
Hard data is all you need, and I never go anywhere in any way questionable, because on this topic,
then you're discredited.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it in this topic. And then what they do is they throw everything else out.
Sure.
Where, you stick with what I just said is unassailable.
Yeah.
In my view. I don't know how you can, it's just what it shows. So in any event.
And in that recent hearing, the public perception hearing, that guy who was being grilled a little bit and he was trying to counter
Stanford professor.
What's his name?
The infectious disease professor.
Jake something.
Yeah. Jake Scott.
He was the only person I could really find that would sort of counter and have a debate with you. From all I've seen, I'm like, who's going to debate this guy? I want to hear somebody counter his, I really wanted to hear some good points. But when he brought some things up about how many lives were saved from the COVID jab, it was like it crumbled, and then he was being grilled and he sort of fell apart.
In my opinion, the reason that Dr. Jake Scott was there, and I almost have some sympathy for him, is that I don't think an actual vaccinologist, which he's not, would have come.
Right.
Would anybody who's a vaccinologist?
So he was paid to take a hit.
It's not about being paid to take a hit. No. It's I don't think that's it. I don't think it's about money for Dr. Scott. No, genuinely, okay. I think he believes. No, really.
Yeah.
I don't think that about him. It's my opinion on it anyway.
Even after that, you don't think you still think he believes? Because it was pretty obvious that he didn't know.
The thing about religion dies hard.
Yeah.
But to put him in context, in my view,
okay,
a vaccinologist who really knows, they know, I believe, that a lot of what he was trying to argue is not defensible because they actually do the trials. They have a better understanding what the clinical trials are that a lot upon to license these vaccines. They know what the post-licensure literature looks like, I think, far better. They have a deeper understanding. They're directly engaged. I think I don't think that they would show up to that hearing.
Got it.
I have publicly told Dr. Offit, for example, Paul Offit, one of the world's leading vaccinologists, let's have a public debate.
Yeah.
Pick a topic. I said, you pick the topic, clinical trials, autism, whatever you want.
Yeah.
10 minutes. We go 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes for 1 hour, equal time, no interrupting, back and forth, videotape it, let the world see. I said, and with the condition that we have a screen and we can put up any evidence we want, because obviously I don't get the field credentials.
Yeah.
I want to be able to put up clinical trial reports, data, studies, so forth, right? He has not accepted that invitation. He has gone back and forth with me on Twitter and on Substack a bit, but he won't do that. And I don't think, and if you're hearing this, Dr. Offit, if you'd like to have a debate, I'd still love to have that with you. But I don't think he would show up to that hearing because he can't defend it, in my opinion. Okay. Now, Dr. Jake Scott, on the other hand, he is, he believes these products are safe and effective. In a CNN article, it says that, and I don't want to butcher it. I think I got this right, but it is that he heard Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s claim about no placebo-controlled trials, and he knew it was wrong, and he was going to set out to prove it. Right? He reached his conclusion
before, yeah.
And then he set out to prove what he already apparently knew. That's not science.
Right.
Now, like I said, I think that he believes in it. Now, he's an infectious disease doctor. So what's his life experience? His life experience is in treating infectious diseases. So he sees people who are impacted by infectious diseases. That's his world orientation. I see folks, and those people should be helped. And I believe in protecting those people too. I appreciate whatever he does to help people in that regard. And I give him that credit. At the same time, I see endless children and adults whose lives are destroyed by these products.
Yeah.
The most incredible suffering you can imagine. And those people need to be helped too.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of folks who think that they have to protect these products at all costs from any claim of anything in order to preserve what their perception of public health is.
Yeah.
But they're losing sight of the big picture.
Yeah. And
I think that there are these doctors who come to believe these mantras about vaccines. And so, I don't think he came in there thinking he's going to take a hit.
Wow.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No way. Read his report that he submitted to the Senate before he went in there. He cites 156 million lives saved. The WHO says a report's a joke.
Yeah.
It's an advertising report. You saw me go through it at the hearing. He believed it when he read it. Why wouldn't he?
And he still does. That's what you're saying.
Well, I don't know. I don't live in Dr. Scott's mind. But I'm saying that
even that senator broke down the numbers and just scaled it out and was like, this doesn't make any sense. The WHO can say this.
Like the 156 million, about 75% of it basically comes down to two vaccines, DTP and the measles vaccine. That's virtually all the lives saves. Well, for DTP, the studies show that it kills far more children than it saves. Study after study after study. It reduces, apparently, according to the studies, the number of deaths from diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, but it causes far more deaths from other things. Children in Guinea-Bissau, they did this, the seminal study found that children in the first 6 months of life died at 10 times the rate who got DTP versus those that didn't. So those who did may have less deaths from DTP, but they were dying far more by overall. It did something to their immune system that made them more susceptible to a whole host. 10 times the rate.
Yeah.
Zero vaccines compared to DTP vaccines. 10 times rate of death in the DTP view.
It's amazing.
So this WHO report is pointing to DTP vaccine, which this body of science reflects kills more children than it saves, and measles vaccine, which we already went through earlier, with regards to cardiovascular and so forth. I think the measles vaccine, because it can stop transmission, unlike most vaccines, can prevent you from dying from measles. But again, it's not the whole story. Okay, so I don't think that he went in, he saw this report, and he was like, yeah, 150 million lives. I don't think he questioned. I don't live in his mind. If he did question it, his report didn't reflect as much. Yeah. I don't think he questioned it. Is he questioning it today? I don't know. Look, when you're, I think after the experience he had at that hearing, did that make him more defensive or more open-minded? Because in my experience, people go one of two ways on this stuff. Either they go to the place where like, okay, you know what? I maybe need to be a little humble. Yeah. And realize I got to look at this more carefully, and I got to really, I may even have to rethink it. And maybe some of the stuff I've said publicly, maybe was not correct. Or you go the other way. And that is you dehumanize the other side. Yeah. You say, they're ridiculous. They're bad. They're crazy. They're loons. They're nuts. That's where you go one of those two ways oftentimes. Yeah. And which way will Dr. Scott goes? Only time will tell. Yeah.
Well, it's happening in real time just from the COVID jabs. A lot of people that were super divided and so pro-vax on that are now realizing just through a little bit of 5 years, everyone's starting to see family members and you're starting to see the outcome. Do you think this is the most devastating vaccine?
COVID vaccine?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people say it's like the Holocaust of, there's people going to the far extent of like, we haven't even seen the full outcome of it, but the amount of damages that it's caused so far.
Well,
what's your perception on it?
My perception on the COVID vaccine is this. First is it is rolled out unlike almost all other vaccines, and because of the following. With most vaccines, you roll it out and you start giving it to cohorts of children. So over time, you increase the number of folks in the population. So after 20, 30 years, you finally maybe vaccinated most of the population. If it caused an issue, over time, it probably would have receded into the background rate. So for COVID vaccine, if it was rolled, instead of giving it 270 million Americans like this, basically, you instead went and you said, okay, we're just going to vaccinate the babies and, and kids, and then we're going to keep doing that. And over time, in 30 years from now, we'll have everybody vaccinated. Okay. I would speculate that, for example, the myocarditis issue would have risen slowly. Nobody would associate it with the vaccine. In 20 years, be like, well, that's just what it is. What's causing it? We don't know. I don't know. And to me, that's the way most vaccines rolled out. We have gone from under 10% of kids have a chronic health issue in America in the early 80s to well over 40% today, often multiple chronic health issues. And what are they? They are issues that are often caused by some form of immune system dysregulation. Asthma, atopic issues, even ADHD is a form of immune system dysregulation. That's what a lot of the studies show. Yeah. Even various other conditions. So when you look across the chronic diseases that have exploded, okay, so then, what's causing the immune system of our kids to go wacky in the last 40 years? Well, they can't tell you because they say they don't know. Maybe you should rule out the product to keep injecting over and over and over and over and over into little babies. So if vaccines are a significant contributor to that chronic disease epidemic, well, I don't know how to put that on a scale on one side and COVID vaccine injuries on another. I don't know how to measure suffering. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I don't have that tool. Yeah. It's a hard, but they're both not good, I'll say. And, the flu shot's given to a large portion of the population every year, but that's not true of most vaccines. So,
and then the correlating factors of non-native EMF, the rollout of 5G, these types of things that are having an effect that RFK even speaks to, this toxic soup. The food industry got really corrupt and we started adding all this weird stuff to the food. Blue light. How many kids now are staring at blue light and they're not outdoors getting natural sunlight? There's so many features where you're like, can we pin it down on this one product, or all these different industries now incentivized to profit, but they're not looking at harms, and we have to go prove to the company that it's causing harm.
I'll
Same
tell you
industry.
categorically that vaccines are not the only cause of the rise in all of that chronic disease, because there are unvaccinated kids that have some of these issues, no doubt. Any environmental insult can cause some type of harm, some type of pathology. Is it one exposure? Is it a combination of exposures?
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that the studies that have compared vaccinated to unvaccinated children, and there are a number of those published studies out there,
Sure.
have found that the vaccinated children have multiple times the rate of all forms of these chronic health issues.
If you had a magic wand and you could get the government's hands out of the industry of vaccines and change things overnight, say you could go in and get RFK and somebody to create a huge shift, how would that look best to change this industry and to keep people from causing more harm? How would you save more lives, and what would be the best solution right now?
I mean, in my mind, there's two things that need to happen. Government needs to get entirely out of the business of these products, and liability needs to put back on the companies, and the government needs to not mandate them. We need to respect people's individual and civil rights, persuade people, and if you can't, that's called informed consent. They were informed, they chose not to consent.
Yeah.
And anything you do to mandate, coerce over that, that's illiberal.
Yeah.
And it is antithetical to what kind of country I believe we want to be. And for anybody out there who loves all vaccines, loves mask mandates, loves stay-at-home orders, think about it like this. If the day comes and there's a medical product you don't want to get, okay? Anybody out there watching this, you don't want to get or not give to your children, and you say no, and then they say, okay, but you can't send your kid to school. You can't get a job. You can't go on planes. You can't go on public transport. You can't go in public spaces. You can't go to church. You're basically a prisoner in your own home. Yeah. And that's why medical liberty to me is a fundamental right. Because if you don't have that right to say no, then all your rights can quickly become meaningless. Because you'll have freedom of speech at home alone,
frozen
and freedom
bank
of
accounts.
everything. Yeah. And so that's why vaccine makers want to make vaccines. Let them go do it. Make drugs, make vaccines. Make whatever you want. I mean, that's freedom. They're private companies. They want to make a product. They want to make money. Let them go do it.
Yeah.
They're a private actor. But the government should not be in cahoots with them. Mandate them. Yeah. Promote them. Pay them for it. Pay them to develop it, and then pay them to buy it. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So in any event, so my solution would be government just entirely out of the business, and let's get back to having these products be treated like any other product. And I think that would solve most of the issue on its own. You're never going to stop people from doing things that you might think aren't safe. But that's the thing. Sure. Who wants we leave to decide that? I don't want the government deciding that. Yeah. And I don't want somebody else deciding that for me or my family. I'm sure most folks don't want them deciding for you and your family. Yeah. They and their family. Because at the end of the day, that's how we end up with problems. Yeah. Got to let people make their own choices, and maybe they won't make the right choice, but that's how freedom works. Yeah.
It requires massive amounts of responsibility. So I'm just curious if you think that the people that are so pro more government, you're seeing it in the institutions, and you're seeing that the people that go to college and the people that are highly educated are the most compliant, most obedient, most willing to not question authority. That's a problem. It's a ticking time bomb, it seems, and it's funny that now the conservative religious folks are the ones that are, pulling back and saying, hold on a minute, this is science, the scientism now. There's like a religious component to say, trust the science. Dr. Fauci said, trust the science. That's all being swallowed. And people that I know that are highly intelligent, doctors, people in society who you think you could just trust, they're smart people. They're the people now that are the most obedient, and they're not critical thinkers. You've seen this, right? It seems like a combustible problem.
dangerous.
Yeah, it's a new religion, and it's fascinating.
It's a
fascinating time to be alive.
yes, and I hope it goes in the other direction.
Yeah, I think it is. I think
is.
the pandemic really woke people up to how quickly we can lose our freedom.
It woke up a portion of, I think actually one portion of our society went one direction, and I think the other went in the other.
Yeah.
Right. And
we don't want to distrust too far. The pendulum can swing so far to now if somebody gets cancer, they're like, I don't trust the institutions whatsoever. That can be a catastrophic mess. But the more you dig in, the more you're like, God, these pharmaceutical industries own the doctors, and they own the institute, they own everything. And so it's really hard. If I was to get diagnosed with cancer now, it's actually hard for me to know who to trust and where to go. And because it goes so deep, but you want to trust, you want to have, you want to get on an airplane and be like, all right, this Boeing plane's safe. I trust that everybody's got checks and balances and I'm going to go fly to Hawaii.
But at least as an adult, they have to persuade you on the cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Right. And companies have to really compete.
Yeah.
And you can sue them and hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So it's not. There are problems in that industry. There are problems.
Just the distrust in general is so high right now.
Yes. But some folks sometimes, and I think this is a very small minority of people, they'll they end up with real cognitive dissonance. They're like, when they see the primary sources on vaccines, sometimes they go to a place where like, holy cow, I can't trust what the CDC is telling me. Like literally what it's saying, is not, and they end up, well, what else can't I trust?
Yeah.
And for, before anybody goes too far on that, I would say that I really do think there's problems in every industry. There's all kinds of in the oncology industry, there's a lot of problems.
Sure.
But I do think that vaccines are really have a unique kind of problem. And the level of conflicts that exist in the federal health agencies that I think Secretary Kennedy is working hard to try and fix. And he's got a job to cut out for him. I think is unmatched. There is no product that I'm aware of where the government defends the interests of the industry with DOJ attorneys against a poor family claiming that industry's product injured them.
Yeah.
That's what happens in the vaccine compensation program, right? If you are injured, you can bring a claim in this program. So, I mean, it's unique. So, that's its own rabbit hole.
Yeah.
As I'm saying that rabbit hole doesn't need to lead to 100 other ones.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't think that what happens with vaccines is easily extrapolated to other things in the government. I actually think it stands in many ways on its own. It's unique.
Yep.
And I think that before you go and you say, okay, can I trust? I broke my arm. I'm going in to get my arm set. I have a high level of trust in the doctor setting my kid's arm.
Yeah.
Sure. Like I'm.
We do good with trauma. We're really good with trauma.
I'm good. Yeah. I've orthopedic surgeons. Obviously, some orthopedics, the more materials they use, you should research it. But like your typical orthopedic surgeon on a typical, issue or whatever, I've got low level issues with that.
Yeah.
Or, so you got to.
But you're not being mandated. You're not losing your job and your freedoms over getting that surgery.
And trust me, they're very concerned about getting sued if they do anything.
Sure.
If they use the wrong product, they put it the wrong way, they use the wrong size, they mess up, they do the wrong, they do an unnecessary procedure. They put the pin the wrong place. They don't properly follow up. They are, they're concerned about it. And so I'm just saying, like, it doesn't, I wouldn't extrapolate from vaccines onto the medical profession writ large. I wouldn't. It doesn't mean most doctors don't get vaccines wrong because they don't know anything about it. But that doesn't mean you should say, okay, that's it. I can't trust you, doc. You orthopedic surgeon on your discipline. Like, that's it. I just can't trust, period.
Yeah.
No, that's a step too far. I mean, we are, I don't want I in my own mind, if I went through it, I have my own depending on the discipline of medicine, because I've had to interact with some of the other ones,
Sure.
different degrees of
Critical thinking.
thoughts on it. But
Yeah.
you should just look at it yourself. Like if you're going to have to go in for an orthopedic surgery and something, I would look at the primary sources. I had a family member who needed something.
Mhm.
I went and I looked at the underlying primary sources
Sure.
to get comfort on it. And you know what? I found what I thought were well-designed studies.
Cool.
And I found, like real studies. Like I wish I was like, wow, why can't they do this vaccines?
Yeah.
This is a great study.
Yeah.
This has given me some actual confidence in the results.
Yeah.
Type of stuff I would love to see in the vaccinology literature. Anyway.
So you must have a little bit of hope with the institution still, with RFK. You know him personally. What's your thoughts on him as a human being? And the ability to make this shift.
Well, my thoughts on him as a human being is I think Bobby, Secretary Kennedy, has, and he's incredible in the following way in particular. I don't know anybody who, on principle, gave up more than he has. He's a Kennedy. He's a scion of the Kennedy family. He was, on the front page of magazines. He had 1 million honorary appointments in 1 million places, all paying him to just use his name, essentially, all kinds of, over the place. He was a darling of the very party and political demographic by being an environmental attorney who did incredible work. Had everything going for him.
Yeah.
And he was doing amazing work. He cleaned up the Hudson, started water keepers, cleaned up rivers all around this country. Good work.
Yeah.
Excellent work. Work you could be proud of. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican or anything. Cleaning up rivers in America is important work.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be political.
Right.
And one of the things he was addressing was mercury from power plants. And nobody had a problem with him fighting that kind of mercury exposure.
Sure.
But then parents started telling him about vaccine injuries.
Yep.
And Bobby has a heart for those who are injured and especially those who are being mistreated by the system. I mean, that's his family's legacy in many ways, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Deep corruption and knowledge of that.
And seeking to protect minorities and underprivileged and those who society has chosen for one reason or another to cast out, ignore, ridicule, put down, whatever it is. And here there was this group of individuals who were treated, who were being injured by these products and who were treated in the worst possible way possible. Tell me one minority group in America that you can go on TV and say, throw them out of school. What minority group can do that? Pick a race, an ethnicity, national, pick one.
Right.
One religious group. Throw them out of school. Who can do that to?
Right.
They're horrible. They're selfish. Could you imagine talking about a group of people like that? You could do that. People unvaccinated.
Yeah.
It's the only group you could really that in mainstream media they talk about like that. And these are families often of people whose children have been injured.
And they've done the most research.
Yeah. We're also most knowledgeable. And so Bobby chose to step in front of this group and fight for them. And in doing that, ended up being attacked viciously to this day. Lost every appointment he had. Lost every position he had. Pretty much everything in that regard. But he stood in what he knew was right, what he knew was true. That is the type of leadership and integrity I wish every politician had. Oh, we'd have no problems in this country if everybody was like Bobby.
Yeah.
And had that kind of integrity. Because takes incredible integrity. And despite the attacks, despite all of that, look where he is. I actually think the reason that he's where he's at is because he never compromised. And people see through that eventually. And I think that at the end of the day, by always doing what's right is what got him where it is. And there's an underbelly too in this country that our federal health authorities, the state health authorities, the medical profession, and many of those who believe in vaccines don't want to admit exists. there's an underbelly of I believe millions based on the data I have available, based on everything that Mike over the last decade of working on this, millions of people who have had some type of negative impact from these products.
Yeah.
And you're never going to change their mind. They know what their lived experience is. You're not going to change somebody's mind who saw what happened to their kid. It doesn't. You could gaslight them. You could throw them out of school. You could take away all their rights. You're not changing what happened.
Yeah.
You're not changing their mind. They know what happened to their kid. So what kind of man do I think Bobby is? I think Bobby's the kind of man, when he sees a wrong, he will stick with it no matter what punishment you inflict upon him.
Yeah.
That's the kind of man he is.
That's amazing. He's willing to die for it.
He literally is.
Yeah.
No, he literally
Yeah.
is willing to, as he said, I mean, he has said many times over the years, he said, there are things worse than death. Living like a slave is one of them.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Do you think he's going to be able to make some headway with this vaccine thing? Some good headway, and maybe even get these COVID jabs and some of the stuff that's been happening with these things pulled? Is it? Do you have hope in that?
I have a lot of hope.
Yeah.
He's got a job toed out for him. He's got 65,000 career employees below in HHS.
Yeah.
Who are the closer they are to working on vaccines, the more of a zealots they are. And I don't say this through just to be hyperbolic. I say this, we have millions of pages from inside the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, HRSA, HRQ, all the agencies, and HHS secretarial from the last 15, 20 years, because we FOIA for them. That's the Freedom of Information Act. And I've reviewed a lot of it. I see the way these, the folks who run the Immunization Safety Office, who you can go down all the different, units and subunits that work on vaccines. I mean, they clamor over each other. One's more of a zealot than the next. And he's got these folks in his agencies. And it's not like you could just walk in and fire everybody. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of protections. So, just leave that alone. But
yeah.
So he's got that below. He's got about 200 political appointees across the agency, right? So those would be, but he doesn't get to pick them. The Trump presidential personnel office, PPO, has to essentially pick them, and they're not. And I would say that many of the folks, for whatever reason, who had very public profiles on vaccines, they didn't get selected, for whatever reason. And so now there's a number of amazing political appointees on Bobby's team that are there. I mean, incredible folks. But he's got his work cut out for him. And then there's politics, and then there's whatever. And, I don't understand it all.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's, for me, it's much. Let's just go to court. Let's just fight in court. But yeah, I think I am very hopeful, and obviously there's already been a number of good developments, and I think it'll continue. It's just going to take time.
Good. How long did it take you to write that book?
Well, I started on it quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
I just kept getting sidetracked with other things. And at the end, the final push, I was like, I got to buckle down. So I buckled down for a good few weeks and got to finish. But obviously, it's accumulation of work over many years.
Yeah.
I didn't sit down and research the book and write it. I had years and years of litigation and experience, and reviewing all this stuff and putting it together.
Yeah.
I didn't put together each of the clinical trial reports just for this book. I'd already done that.
Yeah.
I didn't put together post-licensure safety reviews, and
Yeah.
I'd already done in large part of that. The depositions already happened. I mean,
yeah.
So I had to package it together and
Not
put
easy.
it in my voice. No.
Seems like a monster to do.
It was, and I'm hoping that it will have the impact, which I hope it has, which is if enough people read it, and if you've read it, share it with somebody else.
Yeah.
The point is to get this into as many hands as possible.
Yeah. And read it and see, just read it. I don't know. People are so unwilling to hear a different side right now. That's the real problem, is that people don't want to speak with other people they disagree with. And I think this is the time to do it. Read information that you're uncomfortable with or that you don't agree with, and then come up with your own understanding. Yeah. That's the beauty of knowledge.
And if you're reading this book and you get to any sentence and you're like, really?
Yeah, look it up.
Please go to that's why there's 750 endnotes. Go to the endnote, click on the link. There's also a permalink. So this way, if it changes, it's always there. Look at the primary source yourself. Most of it's government sources and similarly reliable data. It's all right there.
Yeah.
Do that enough. I think you'll stop doing it because you'll be like, okay.
Yeah, he's done his work.
Yeah. It is so, and I mean, I really hope that folks who are undecided, who are curious, who are even, are like, no, I believe in vaccines, but are willing to actually just think a little bit. I hope those folks really read this book. Yeah. I don't know how to get to them. I don't know how to reach them. CNN, I don't think,
it is hard. Yeah, you want the people that to read it that wouldn't read it, but it's just a weird. Yeah. As soon as I saw Peter McCullough reading it, I bought the book, and that's when I started diving into your work, and it's fascinating. What's your plan with this? Do you want to speak about your new project with this podcast setup here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm, given the kind of the amount of media attention that my firm and me, keep getting, wanted and unwanted.
Yeah.
I figured, it's hard spending a lot of time just going on different news agencies to respond to this and that. And I just figured it might be easier for me to just have a platform to just get the message out directly. And so I've, gonna, I guess, start a podcast, I guess you would call it, Inform with Aaron Siri. That's the name that's kind of came out of the wood chipper.
Yeah. I'm glad we could host my show here for you. It's nice. Yeah. It's really nice.
I love it. That's fun. It's kind of like it's your show just on my future set, basically.
You get better quality control here. So this is nice.
Yeah.
I always ask every guest on my show, if you were going to die today and your book didn't exist, nothing that you had ever done was on the internet, and you could say one thing right now to the world, what would you say to them?
I'd probably say something to my kids, though.
Say it to your kids, but whatever you say to your kids probably just as important.
But you want me to give you a message that I would tell the world?
Yeah, it's going to be on the internet forever.
Oh my goodness!
This is your last day alive.
I guess I've watched a number of your podcasts, but I guess I never got to the end.
Never got to the end.
Nope, I've watched a few.
Yeah. It just makes you dig a little deeper on what do you think the most powerful thing you could share is, though, for people right now?
I mean, in this moment right now, what I would say is that our country, we've always had disagreements. And we've evolved as a country that we resolve our disagreements through debate, even vicious debate, TV, newspapers, stages, you name it, any form imaginable. But we always draw the line of violence. And it's a thin line. Because once we cross that line, then we become like a Somalia. When we engage in political violence, that is where what we have built here dies.
Yeah.
And, the death of Charlie Kirk, I think, it brought this into real focus in the following way. Charlie's death was beyond a tragedy because he was doing what you should do in American debate. That's what he's doing. And if it was like, one crazy person did whatever they did, okay, like not that that's okay, but okay, that guy, crazy. And we're all going to condemn it. But when we see, I'm not even talking about the cheering and the dancing, forget that stuff. But just, I watched endless videos of just everyday college kids just walk around campus. Like, what do you think? Well, he had it coming. There's not dance, there's not cheering. He had it coming. There's that notion, the lack of a sense that no. Nobody has it coming for just debate.
Yeah.
That's a shift.
Yep.
That's a shift that when I was growing up, I think when most of us were growing up in this country, I think we all understood intuitively the opposite. We grew up with the idea that when the neo-Nazis marched through a Jewish town in Skokie, Illinois, we defend their right to do that because that protects all our freedoms. We don't go shooting them.
Yeah.
We don't say they had it coming. We literally do the opposite direction. And it really concerns me that there appears to be, and I don't know what it is, but a significant segment in our society right now that when somebody gets killed for debating, even if you abhor their views,
Sure.
and I'm sure, I'd like to think that they would view those neo-Nazis' views as far more abhorrent than Charlie Kirk's views, okay? That they would not view that as he had it coming.
Yeah.
They would view that as that's a line too far, because if too many people adopt that view, if too many people think that way, we're going to descend into so many other countries where freedoms are lost because that civic contract, that civil contract has gone away.
Yeah.
And then nobody can have an event without layers and layers of security. I mean, where I don't want to call out other countries, but you can think of them, and you can think about how when politics goes that way, freedoms also get lost along the way for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I would leave with the message, let's not go down that road.
Yeah.
Because I see that as an existential threat to our, what I will call liberal democracy, not liberal conservative, but liberal, freedom-loving democracy.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you should be able to speak and disagree, and at the core, connect with people and meet on common ground and respect freedom, So I appreciate you today for doing this. It's an important book. I read it. And for anyone that doesn't like the title, whatever their views are, I encourage them to read it. And I really do appreciate your time today. It's been nice chatting with you.
It's been really great. I hope we could do it again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes, and rate the show. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.